Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm back again to, how do you say? I'm back again to expand on this whole Deuteronomy prophecy of when Moses says, prophet like me unto you from your brethren or from your brothers, whether, because the argument is that the Christians assume that this is Jesus, and they attribute to Acts chapter 3, I want to say, where Peter says this is the fulfillment of this prophecy is Jesus, which means that Peter, who people consider to be uh, one of the disciples, basically saying this fulfillment is Jesus. And if that's the case, that means that he has to be a prophet like Moses, meaning that whatever Moses was, Jesus can't be different from that. Because if Moses' prophecy is saying a prophet like me unto you, it means prophet like me, similar to me, not a prophet like me, but then has more special features that have more, it's like, if you're a prophet like Moses, you're a prophet like Moses, not a prophet like me, but has more special features and is a prophet, if anything, more unlike me. I know that sounded confusing, but the point being is like, if this prophecy is referencing Jesus, but then the way Christians portray Jesus, then it's as if they're saying this fulfillment of this prophecy is about Jesus, but then the way the modern Christianity describes Jesus is more unlike Prophet Moses than Muhammad. When you look at Jesus and Moses, if Jesus is considered the fulfillment of that prophecy, it means he's like Moses. It means that the theology of Trinity and that Jesus is all of these other things other than a prophet, then it shows you that the Christians are caught in two. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it that he's the fulfillment of this Deuteronomy chapter 18 prophecy, and at the same time, he's more than a prophet. You can't have it both ways. You either have it, he's a prophet like Moses, like when the prophecy is a prophet like me, Moses is saying prophet like me. So it's either he is a prophet like Moses and he is the fulfillment of that prophecy, or he is more than a prophet, which that's the theology of the Christians. But the thing that the theology of the Christians, they say that they believe in this theology, and at the same time, he is the fulfillment of this prophecy of a prophet like Moses. But how does that make sense? If he's a prophet like Moses, these two things can't be right, because if you think that he's a prophet like Moses, and then you also think that Jesus is more than a prophet, then is Moses more than a prophet? Is Moses a 100% man, 100% God? And is Moses Son of God, and all of these blasphemous things that the theology is that Christians think? And was Moses crucified like Jesus? And was Moses doesn't have wife and kids like Jesus didn't have wife and kids? And was Jesus has a mission to be a Messiah? Don't you get it? Like these two things of um, Jesus' divinity according to Christian theology, and as well as that he's the fulfillment of this prophecy, cannot go hand in hand. Because even if you think that this theology is attributed to Jesus, and then you say that he's the fulfillment of this Deuteronomy chapter 18 of when Moses says this, then if you say these things about Jesus and Moses says he's a prophet like me, then you think Moses was also 100% man, 100% God, got crucified and all of these things, because it's likeness. It's Moses is saying for that prophecy, it's about prophet like me. He's not saying a prophet that I am like him. He's saying is a prophet like me. So it means that they're the same in prophethood. Meaning that if they're the same in prophethood, and Moses was not son of God, Moses was not 100% God and 100% man, and Moses was not a part of a trinity, and Moses was literally talking to God directly, like, what? And that's the difference. Even Moses was talking to God directly, and then people think Jesus, what? Like, they think that Jesus is 100% God, 100% man. These things don't go hand in hand. So was Moses talking to God directly, or or and then but was Moses and Jesus both talking to God directly, or do you think Jesus is God? It's all, these things are the contradictions I'm talking about, where Christians will hold this idea and that idea, and both of them don't contradict according to Christians. And how does that add up? It doesn't. This is the answer. But anyways, let me just not get frustrated with nonsense, but let me just, for educational purposes, let me do a graph where it's more practical. Instead of me just ranting about the nonsense theology of Christians, let me just make a graph to simplify things for the Christians that think that this prophecy is about Jesus, and to show you the actual likeness of Moses and Muhammad, so that you just have an idea of, like, who's actually more alike, Jesus and Moses or Muhammad and Moses. Or even if you put the three, who's going to have more commonality? And you'll actually realize with this graph, when you really think about it, that Jesus is more different to both of them. Jesus actually has uniqueness to both of them. Like, in terms of Moses and Muhammad actually have a lot of similarities. But when you look at Jesus, he has a lot of uniqueness. And I'm not talking about divinity. The Christians will be like, oh, well, he's proving our point or whatever. And it's like, no, because if anything, you think he's unique and he's also a prophet like Moses. Those two things don't go hand in hand. The point being is that either way, prophet like Moses, and it's Jesus or Muhammad, even if it's referencing Muhammad, it shows that Muhammad's message is true and Jesus is a prophet. Or if it's referencing Jesus, Jesus is a prophet like Moses, and a prophet like Moses is not 100% man and 100% God, because Moses was not 100% man, 100% God. But the point being is like, the uniqueness I'm talking about Jesus, I'll say it within the graph, but like, it's not actually to do with divinity. It's more about his mission and his ministry. His ministry was actually not the unique part, if anything, because they're all three of their ministries are pretty similar. But I'm talking about his mission as the Messiah is what sets him apart. In terms of like his mission, it doesn't like, his mission is that he's a Messiah, and that's why you can look at that prophecy about with Moses and say that it's not referencing Jesus, because if he is a prophet like Moses, Moses is not a Messiah. And like, when you look at Muhammad, he is a prophet like Moses because he's not the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah, and Muhammad is not the Messiah, and Moses is not the Messiah. So Moses and Muhammad, they're not Messiahs. Jesus, Messiah. Moses, not Messiah. What more do I have to say? So, anyways, the graph. Let's get to the nitty gritty and not waste any more time about this whole, like, forget all the extra wording and stuff. Like, I've already said what I had to say. I'm gonna just show you the graph to simplify things for a layman that maybe is at a certain point not even following along or anything of that nature, where it's just, I'm just yapping and people probably like, bro, what's this guy yapping about? Let me just get straight to the point and show the graph where it shows that this Deuteronomy prophecy is more likelier to speak about someone with more similarities to Moses rather than differences with Moses. Okay, let's get to it. Oh, am I able to switch the camera? Oh, I guess not. Okay. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Let's see. Alright, I guess I'm gonna lean it like this and go like this. I'm not sure you the. Alright, so Here we go. Moses. And Muhammad. Moses. And Jesus. Okay. This is the graph. Now, when it comes to Jesus and Moses, the similarities between Jesus and Moses is the ministry and that they led a nation. That's the similarity. So we're gonna go one tally for that. Moses and Jesus both were leaders and had their ministries and led a nation in terms of like the disciples and taught a nation within and they received revelation. So yeah, ministry, revelation, they both received revelation. You know, if you want to get if you want to be favorable to Jesus, we'll give him an extra tally for that one, because you could say ministry, nation, ministry, leading the nation are one, and then revelation, that they both receive revelation, is the second tally. Now, the funny thing about this is that Muhammad has both these tallies as well. So there we go. 1, 2. So far it's tied. We could write at the top of this Deuteronomy 18 prophecy. Who? So right now it's tied 2-2. Okay? Now for the actual differences for Jesus, that he's different than both Muhammad and Moses, is that he's a Messiah. So his mission is completely different from both prophets, and it actually adds a point to Muhammad because he's closer to Moses in that aspect. But you know, just to be favorable to Jesus, just to show you how diluted like the mindset of this prophecy based off of the Christian modern theology. But it just shows you, like, anyways, to be favorable to Jesus, and this is me being favorable, already giving them 2 tallies is favorable. But the fact that I'm not even going to add a tally to Muhammad to show you that the fact that Jesus was a Messiah that set him apart from both, and that it actually adds a point to Muhammad is actually similarity to Moses because he wasn't a Messiah, I'm still not going to take off a point from Jesus and Moses or add one to Muhammad. Okay, now we go to them as people. In terms of with Moses, he was called a magician, and he was called a magician, and he was called a crazy person or a madman. He was called a Sahir and Majnoon, and this is in the Quran. Sahir and Majnoon was labeled at Moses and against Musa, and it was also labeled against Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we're gonna add that tally right here. 3-2. Moses and Muhammad, they both had wives. Jesus didn't have a wife. That's 4. Moses and Muhammad, they had children. That's 5. Moses and Muhammad died of old age. That's 6. Another thing I forgot to say is Jesus got crucified according to your theology, but not Muslims. We don't believe he got crucified. But that's the thing, is that's why I'm reluctant to use that as a tally, because even theologically, but if we're going based off of the Christian theology, which I'm not, and I don't believe that because it's blasphemous. But the point being, for the point of for argument, Jesus, to the theology of the Christians, was crucified, which is another like separation from him and Moses, that Moses was not crucified. And either way, uh um even if we want to go based off of, no, I have to add a tally, because look, even if you go based off of the theology of the false theology of the Christians, that Jesus was crucified, it sets him apart from Moses and Muhammad. And even for us Muslims, that we know that he was ascended to Allah for his mission as the Messiah, and he wasn't crucified because his mission is bigger, and as a Messiah he is still to be ascended uh, and then descend back to defeat the Antichrist in the end of times. That is still sets him apart from both Moses and Muhammad. So whether you want to say Christian theology, which is a false theology, or Muslim theology, which is the true theology of him ascending and descending back onto earth in the end of times, that sets him apart from Moses and Muhammad. So that's another point to Moses and Muhammad's similarity, and the fact that they both didn't get to ascend. They both died on earth at old age, and Isa got ascended to Allah, and he's going to descend back for his mission as a Messiah to defeat the Antichrist. So that's another point for Moses and Muhammad, that they were not ascended, they died on the earth. Although I already wrote that they both died of old age, but the fact that they didn't die on that they didn't get ascended, that they just died, that's a point, because it's not about dying of old age only. It's the fact that they died of old age and they weren't ascended alive. And Jesus was ascended alive and didn't die of old age or crucifixion. But with the Christian theology, he was crucified, which also is different from Moses and Muhammad. Now, there was another thing where it was that Moses that he led a nation and Muhammad led a nation, and they both got revelation. I don't think I put that tally, so that's 8. And that they both got revelation and led a nation, and they both made hijrah away from where they grew up, or their hometown. Moses did it twice, and so did Muhammad. He did it twice because he already conquered Mecca and he still went back to Medina. But anyways, whether once or twice, they both made hijrah away from their hometown. Meaning that when Moses was raised in the home of Pharaoh, and where his mother was, where they were in Egypt, when they were under the slave regime of Pharaoh, they were in Egypt. Moses, when he led his nation across the Red Sea, he led his nation and they did hijrah, meaning they migrated away from Egypt to go across the Red Sea. And with Muhammad, he did hijrah away from Mecca to Medina, so away from his hometown. So that's another point. And I'm not just like making, like you guys seen when I made the emotion. So this is 9 verse 2. I mean, let me think else. Let me think what else. Honestly, like I'm trying to think what else, but honestly, what more do I have to say? Okay. I'll say this, actually. I forgot this though. To be fair to Moses and Jesus' similarities, that Moses had a brother named Aaron, Harun, and Jesus had a cousin. I was gonna say brother, but he had a cousin with John the Baptist. But you know what? Because in Islam, Moses and Harun, Moses and Aaron were both prophets in that message, and then Yahya and Isa were both prophets, you can say maybe they weren't brothers, but they both had family members that were prophets simultaneously. So you know what? I was gonna say no, actually, but you know what? Yes, actually. Even though it wasn't brothers, see, this is me being fair to Jesus and Moses' similarities. People can say, oh, but that's not similar because they're not brothers. You know what? I'm gonna give them that one where they had family members that were prophets simultaneously with them. Isa and Yahya, Jesus and John the Baptist, and Moses and Aaron, Musa and Harun. So, even though they're not both brothers, one's cousins and one's brothers, I'm gonna give them that point. Moses and Jesus similarities, because Muhammad didn't have somebody that was a prophet at the same time as he was a prophet. So that is the actual difference. So even if, you know what, because Muhammad didn't have that a prophet simultaneously, and both of Isa and Moses had that, I'm gonna give it a point. I'm gonna give it 2 points to Isa, Jesus and Moses similarities. So that you know, I don't have an agenda against Moses and Jesus. And I'm really trying to think to add points to really see if the prophecy of Jesus fits the profile of being likeness to Moses. And I'm gonna really think hard for more things to add to both of them being a part of that prophecy. So 2 points. 2 points. Okay? Now, I'm gonna pause the video and think more, because honestly, yeah. Okay, I figured it out. I could only think of one more similarity of Jesus and Moses, and I'll give it another 2. Look at this. I'm trying to be favorable because of this, because of its special similarity in terms of obviously uh um the family members being prophets simultaneously. I already gave those 2 marks. And now I'm going to give 2 more marks for this that people might not be aware of, like, and even Islamically. Actually, I'm not exactly sure if I could confirm this Islamically. So let me take that back in terms of Islamically. But what I will say is that I'm gonna use this just to help the case of Jesus and that Moses prophecy based off of what I've seen in the Bible. Although Islamically, it's not what we believe theologically, but we do understand that Mary and all of them were from the children of Israel, that they were practicing the Jewish practices. But we don't have, I don't have the, I don't remember within the Quran that he was practicing the Torah within it. Or actually, no, it actually does confirm it in Surah As-Saf. In Surah As-Saf, actually, now I remember it. Yeah. It says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. It says, يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص وإذ قال عيسى بن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعد اسمه أحمد فلما جاءهم بالبينات قالوا هذا سحر مبين. So, actually, Quranically, it does actually confirm that Isa was practicing the Torah. So I'm going to give that 2 points. 2 points. This is what I'm doing to help the case that Isa is what that prophecy was about in reference to Deuteronomy chapter 18. So far, this is it before I add the tallies. 2 points I'm going to add so that Isa is closer to that prophecy. But this is about being fair. It's not like I'm trying to favor either or. I'm just telling, you're seeing it live. Me looking for things to look for who's closer to that prophecy in similarity. And keep in mind, I could have taken points off of Isa because of the point of ascension and stuff, that I didn't take those points off. Or according to Christians, crucifixion, which is fake theology, but anyways, we'll leave that for a different conversation. The point being is the fact that Isa practiced the Torah and Musa preached and practiced the Torah. And that, I'm going to give 2 points for Isa and Moses' similarities, that Muhammad had his revelation but he didn't practice the Torah, because Jesus practiced the Torah prior to his ministry, and because his lineage were Jewish, from the Jewish lineage of Isaac and Jacob, and the children of Israel were practicing the Torah up until Jesus got his ministry, and then he was preaching from the gospel revelation from God that Jesus never seen Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It was revelation. It was the revelation directly to Jesus. It's Jesus' gospel. It's gospel from God to Jesus, not Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, and Isaiah, and the fake Paul that made up this fake theology. Okay? And also the false prophecies of Paul, the fact that Jesus' return was supposed to be imminent within the 1st century or within his lifetime, and blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the point being, 2 points for Jesus practicing the Torah and Moses practicing and preaching the Torah. 2 points. So that it adds that extra, so that I'm really trying to be fair in terms of seeing who is closer to that prophecy. So y'all see it. 2 points. So it's 4 right here. So it's 4, 5, 6. I mean, it wasn't, so it's already 4. I put 5 and then 6. Okay. This is literally all I could come up with in terms of similarity between the two. And I'm really trying to rack my brain thinking something else. But I'm really trying to think of similarity that the other doesn't have. And right now, this is it, literally. So when you count the tallies up, it's 9 versus 6. 6 being Moses and Jesus similarities, and 9 being Muhammad and Jesus similarities. So the winner has to be, when you look at Deuteronomy 18, prophecy, who is it speaking about? Who is it referencing? When you look at the differences and similarities between all 3, the closest two to each other is Moses and Muhammad, because 6 in terms of with Jesus and Moses, and 9 with Moses and Muhammad. And you guys watched me look for every excuse to make it that it was not make it, because I'm not trying to make it, and I'm not leaning either way. I'm just trying to really, really, really see why the Christians are assuming that this prophecy is about Moses. The fact that he says from your brothers or from your brethren, and the brethren of the Israelites is Ishmaelites, is the lineage of Ismail. That's the lineage of the brethrens of those. And if you want to say the brothers, he meant it within the children of Israel, either way, that just proves Moses is a prophet and nothing more. Or if it's Muhammad, then Muhammad's prophecy about, and Muhammad's nation and what they follow is that Jesus is a prophet only. And even if Moses' prophecy was about Jesus, then Jesus is a prophet only, because Moses was a prophet only. He was not 100% God, 100% man, or son of God, or because people will say that Jesus is the biological son of God and Moses wasn't that. So that already makes him, that should basically chalk off a point from Jesus and Moses' likeness. But because I don't believe in that theology, I'm not even going to do that out of fairness to keeping it seem like Moses and Jesus, and that's the prophecy about Jesus. But it's not, because the fact that you guys think even like that Jesus is a biological son of God and Moses is not, that means when Moses saying a prophet like me, why would he be referencing a prophet that is not like him and is not the, obviously we don't believe this as Muslims, that he's not a biological son of God. Moses is not, so Jesus, you think he is, or so it's not Jesus. So I mean, you just look at this, it's like 9:6. Who? Deuteronomy 18, prophecy. Who? You tell me. The answer's clear. It's Muhammad. I don't know how to break it down easier. Like, you guys went through this with me. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, maybe in the comment section, you guys could tell me so I could add more tallies for Jesus. But it's like, in terms of things that are actually historically proven. The funny part about it is even me giving a mark for Moses and Harun being prophets at the same time, that's actually in Islam. In Christianity, Aaron is not a prophet, bro. Think about that. Aaron's not even a prophet in Christianity. So if we're going hypothetically based off your fake theology, that actually makes it 5 for Jesus and Moses. What the heck more do we need to say? So what the answer to this is, you tell me. It, like, I actually added a point for the Moses and Aaron thing that is not even for Christian. That's not even within Christianity. Moses and Aaron were not simultaneously prophets in Christianity. That's actually only in Islam. So even if we're talking about this prophecy within the scope of Christianity, I added an extra point for that from Islam. I don't know what more to say. What is there to say? So really, this is basically 5 verse 9, but we'll say 6 verse 9 to be for you guys to be happy. But it should be made way more, most likely. I mean, it should be way less. And if you guys have any objection, please leave comments and tell me you're tripping.